Welcome back. And this year, instead of doing individual shorts like I did last year, let's go back to a normal traditional countdown, shall we? This is, in my perspective, top 5 favorite games of 2024. With that said, it should be interesting to see people's response to my personal top 5 favorite games of the year. First up, number 5 is going to be a bit of a hot take. Alone in the Dark remake. Now, I see a lot of people taking cheap shots and stuff here and there, bashing on specific elements, and Alone in the Dark remake is it perfect? No, not by any means, especially if you put it up against other remake horror games such as the Resident Evil remakes. With that said, I come from the perspective of someone who has actually played the OG original Alone in the Dark for the 3DO. So, this has come from somebody who has played the original on original hardware platform. So, admittedly, I'm not as biased, plus, I actually have a history with the franchise. Unlike a lot of people out there on YouTube who are bashing on the game, have probably never played the original Alone in the Dark, let alone on original platform like the Panasonic 3DO, such as myself. With that said, yes, there are issues, definitely here and there. There's definitely issues in pacing and certain other elements, but I think they actually get the atmosphere good. I think the music is solid. Overall, it is my fifth favorite game of the year, Alone Dark Remake, and you can bash all they want. Next up is a game I have unfortunately digitally. Uh, it's a Student game. Basically, it's a family-friendly version of Dark Souls, more or less combat-wise, but with a crab. And interesting mechanics with each thing you do in the place of the shell. It's really fun, it's great family-friendly, but it's also hard as nails like many Souls-like games as they go by, or as I call them, Soulsborne games. With that said, it is a great game, I think, in that aesthetic. I like the more cel shaded art style. I like the environment of being underwater most of the time, and I like the fact you have very much a variety of different combat elements to use, and it is interesting how it changes it up depending on what you use as a shell, temporary until you get your real shell back. Overall, it is a definite must play game from my personal perspective and definitely deserves the number 4 spot for the year. For me, coming in at number 3 favorite of the year goes to The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, pretty much the very first game that you play specifically as Zelda. Well, up until maybe towards the end of the game for the big final battle and everything against Gandorf. With that said, overall, I do like the game for its unique mechanics, which I talked about in my quick review in the past. But in the future, sometime, if you're at all interested, leave a comment. Let me know if you are. If you'd like me to do a more traditional review of this. If so, more than willing, as Zelda is one of my favorite franchises of all time. In fact, in my top 5 favorite franchises ever. That's why you see the background like you do, with all the different Zeldas. Whether it's the manga, the games, or even being featured in some like Soul Calibur. Nevertheless, this has come from a lifelong Zelda fan. Honestly, it is fun and unique and different, and I like it for that. I like that it uses more the camera look down elements of like a Link's Awakening remake, which I actually really like. The the whole artsy design and stuff, it gives it its very own unique feel, like with the Link's Awakening remake. So definitely, I do recommend if you haven't tried out this game, do. And yeah, it's easily my number 3 favorite game of the year. I'm sure a lot of people have it lower and stuff. I get it, but I like just the feel and stuff, and it feels like I'm going back to like the 3DS era with like Link Between Worlds, or even going back to stuff like Link to the Past on the Super Nintendo. Like, I just appreciate that whole feel, and I think it's cool finally Zelda gets a game of her own. It's about time. Coming in at number 2 shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, because if you know, you know I am a lifelong MVC fan. So with that said, coming in at number 2 favorite game of the year, or games plural, is Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection Arcade Classics, which definitely deserves the praise and love it gets. And the collection is superb. You get a Punisher beat 'em up, which I've actually never played prior to the collection. So it's cool getting to try it for the first time, as I am a fan of old school beat 'em ups like Final Fight, as well as Streets of Rage, as well as, I would say, another good example is, well, a little series like Double Dragon, as well as many others, and great modern beat 'em ups out there in the world, such as, I would say, River City Girls is one of the best modern, as well as Scott Pilgrim versus the World. But with that said, this is a superb, great beat 'em up game in the collection, as well as the other games. I mean, you got X-Men Children of the Atom, you have X-Men vs. Street Fighter, which is many people's favorites. One of my personal favorites, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, as well as the Marvel Superheroes game, which is awesome. Also, the fact you can play with the bosses is also cool, and the Japanese version of the Saturn, you can actually play with the Japanese comedian, which is actually cool. And as well as, of course, Marvel vs. Capcom 1, which in my opinion is the best of the Versus series. But that's my view, or at least in this collection. Also, it is great to see Marvel vs. Capcom 2 out for a new generation, plus the fact you can play this with rollback netcode online makes it all the better. So, it is a definite must-play if you are a long-time Capcom fan, Marvel vs. Capcom fan, if you're just in general a fan of classic fighting games. It's a must. Now, with that said, number 1 should not be a surprise. You hear the music in the background from the series. Also, because of unfortunately stopping and recording other stuff, I will not be, it'll probably be a little time before I continue uploading gameplay from my playthrough. But with that said, my number 1 favorite game of 2024, Silent Hill 2 Remake. Easily, bar none, gets my number 1 game of the year, and I like how it adds a lot of stuff, the environmental stuff, and I do recommend if you play this game, play it with headphones, because you will notice certain elements, sounds in the background and stuff in the game, you won't hear with normal sound, like normal speakers and stuff. You will only notice with having at least halfway decent headphones, and you'll notice these details which add an extra layer of creepiness and dread to the experience. And also, they turned Pyramid Head from an intimidating creature from the original 2 into a freaking nightmare in the remake. Like, Pyramid Head now is far superior and far scarier to fight in the remake. With that said, as a whole, this game is a 10 out of 10 game for me, just like the original or Restless Dreams on the Xbox. Either way, this is a pinnacle remake in my opinion. It actually kept the creepiness factor of the old Silent Hill games, which is great in the fact they brought back Yamaoka to do the music composition is also a definite win-win in my opinion, as for me, I think the Silent Hill music is some of the most iconic video game music of all time. Like, if I could honestly go into a 30-minute rant of support for the Silent Hill series, as I hold it at the same level, or the original Team Silent era Silent Hill from Konami, I hold higher regard than even the original Resident Evil games. Though Resident Evil 2 may be my favorite overall horror game of all time, Silent Hill 2 is definitely neck and neck. It is basically right there at the same level, as it's a 10 out of 10 just like Resident Evil 2. And of the remakes, though, I will argue I think Silent Hill 2 is my favorite horror game remake so far. I would say in a close second would probably go to Silent Hill or to Resident Evil Remake on the GameCube. That and as well as maybe also up there pretty high is also the Resident Evil 4 remake. But with that said, that is it. That is my top 5 favorite games of 2024. What were your personal top 5 favorites of the year? And which ones on my list do you agree and disagree with? Here's to see people's opinions, but yeah, for me, and also I want to say, Silent Hill 2 got robbed at the Game Awards. The fact it got nominated for 4 things, like specifically audio design and music, it should have won those awards, definitely. It is a S tier level when it comes to audio and sound design. There is no other game, in my opinion, this year that even comes at the same level as Silent Hill 2. People can preach all they want about Rebirth and stuff like Max. Yes, the music is great on and stuff. I feel though, when it comes to FF7, no matter what it is overrated. Silent Hill 2 is the pinnacle of survival horror. Definitely the original for the original era, and the remake for this new era. With that said, I may talk about my top 5 favorite announcements from the Game Awards in the future. We'll see. With that said, that is it this time. I'll see you all next time. Stay safe out there. And happy, safe holiday season to everyone out there. And hopefully enjoyed the Silent Hill music in the background.